One of the most popular ways to stay healthy these days is to try to boost our levels of NAD, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. And while in the past there was really only one supplement that has been touted to do that, now there's a new kid on the block. It's called NMN, Nicotinamide Mononucleotide. So in this video, my questions are these. A, do NMN supplements work? And by work, I specifically mean, do they boost NAD levels? And also, can they help you live longer and prevent disease? I've looked at the research, I've formed some opinions, so I'm going to show you the research, pose some questions to you, and then summarize it all up and give you my opinions at the end. Let's just jump right into it and see what we can see. Now, as I said a minute ago, NAD levels are very popular these days, so much so that I did a video previously on natural ways to boost NAD levels, and that's because I personally think some of these supplements are kind of expensive. So I'll direct you to that other video for more information. But it's out of that video that this one came about, because this is where people started asking me about NMN. So what is it? Well, as I said a second ago, it stands for nicotinamide mononucleotide, and essentially it's a downstream metabolite of niacin, vitamin B3, also called nicotinamide. Now, I've looked at the research, and I want to tell you it's very complicated. Got a lot of biochemistry in these studies, and I'm not going to talk about any of the biochemistry. I want to cut to the chase, because I think looking at the science of this stuff kind of omits our view of the big picture. So what's the summary of all this? Well, when you take a supplement such as nicotinamide riboside, which is the most common NAD booster on the market these days, it eventually gets made into NMN, and NMN in turn will boost NAD levels. So the common question might then be, well, why can't I just take NMN instead of nicotinamide riboside? It'll do the same thing. Interesting you say that, because I did some research on this, and I eventually found my way at the websites of the two companies that make the most popular nicotinamide riboside supplements. They make products called Niagen, which maybe you've seen on, Instagram and TV and stuff like that. Another one out there is called Lithium Basis. Now, while these two companies are usually in direct competition with each other, one thing they tend to agree on is that neither of them tend to like NMN. They both have articles which talk about how their products are better than this. And the argument they make is that NMN is too big to be absorbed efficiently by the body. One of these companies actually says it's kind of like trying to push a big old bed through a doorway. It's not as efficient. And one of the companies also, in response to all this controversy, will actually point your attention to this study of nicotinamide riboside, where they literally do say, we confirm that NMN is metabolized outside the cell to nicotinamide riboside, that is then taken up by the cell and converted to NAD. So essentially they're saying that because NMN is so big and bulky, we got to first convert it into nicotinamide riboside so that we can absorb it, and then NR is reconverted back into NMN, and then it gets made into, helps us make NAD. So I think it's more complicated than this, and I'm not convinced this always is the case, but nevertheless there is some research that in some cases NMN has to be converted into NR first before it can get into the cells and boost NAD. Regardless of all that, there are studies such as this one showing that when you take NMN supplements, or they basically give it to these mice, probably in the form of water, that it raised their NAD levels, okay? And in this particular study also, they noted that it increased their lifespan. I want to point out again, that's a mouse study, that's not a human study. Right now, there is no evidence that either NMN or nicotinamide riboside extends the human lifespan of humans. But regardless, let's stick a pin in that for the moment, and let's look at basically some other topic, which is that NMN is not just found in supplements, but is found naturally in certain foods. I like this particular study. Long-term administration of nicotinamide mononucleotide mitigates age-related physiological decline in mice. Again, it's a mouse study. Again, noting that it raised NAD levels and did some good stuff. But they point out in this study that vegetables and fruits contain small amounts of NMN. Specifically, like for instance, edamame. If you were to eat 100 grams of edamame, that's 3.5 ounces for us in America, you'd be getting anywhere from about 0.47 to 1.88 milligrams of NMN. Same thing with broccoli, 3.5 ounces of broccoli getting 0.25 to 1.2 milligrams, again, per 3 ounces. Now, it's a very, very small amount compared to what's in supplements. There are NMN in supplements with 150 milligrams, for instance. So again, does that necessarily mean more NMN is going to be better than less? That's a question that I think actually needs to be addressed by the researchers. But I point this out because I just want you to realize it's in food in small amounts. It's not just found in dietary supplements. Now, let's leave the food alone for a little while, and let's look at some of the research on NMN. This is a small summary of the research I looked at when I put this video together. And as you see, I broke them down into study results, and as I call them, test subjects. I'm just summarizing these studies. We've got over here, first one, Alzheimer's study, diabetes study, aging study. You get the point. Now, if we look over at the study results, we find across the board, NMN increases nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide levels, increases NAD, increases over here in the third study, increases NAD. So again, is it whether it's less efficient or not? Again, we need studies to prove it's less efficient, but research does show that when you take NMN, at least in laboratory animals, it does bolster their NAD levels in their cells. Now, second point I want to get across to you on this particular table, who are the test subjects? Mice and rats. Right now, there are no human studies on NMN dietary supplements on, again, people. Just because it raises NAD levels in, for instance, mice and rats, does that necessarily mean it's going to do the same thing in humans? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. We need to test it in people to find out. Now, while people might say, but Joe, we have a lot of DNA in common with mice, and that's why it's applicable to humans. Well, yeah, I looked actually at the 23andMe website, which noted that we have about 92% of our DNA in common with mice, but that doesn't necessarily mean the same things are going to happen in mice and people. For instance, how long does a mouse live? Maybe 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever. My grandmother lived to 104 years of age. So subtle differences in DNA can sometimes lead to drastic changes between organisms. And again, that's why I'm a little hesitant on NMN, because again, until I see the human research, I'm not quite sure what it's going to do in people. It may do the same thing, it may not, hard to say. Now, the other thing I'm going to point out with this particular study is I want to draw your attention to this fourth study, because it's unlikely you're going to see this study very much mentioned. Sperm health. Let's go to the results of this particular study. NMN increases NAD levels in the testes, but it also reduced sperm count and sperm vitality. I take that to mean swimming ability was less. And also, NMN increased the oxidative damage inside the sperm. Oxidative damage means free radical production. What's going on here? Hard to say. This is only the study I've ever seen that has actually shown this, but one possibility is that as you're increasing NAD levels, you're helping the mitochondria to work better, because that's where NAD works, inside the mitochondria. Well, what happens when the mitochondria make energy? They produce free radicals. And so is it possible that as you are ramping up your NAD production inside the mitochondria, you're also increasing free radical damage? Again, hard to say. Again, mice and people are not the same thing. So again, I throw this out to you just for your consideration. Again, it does maybe beg to the question, is there an upper limit to which we can increase NAD, or these supplements which take hundreds of milligrams of NMN or nicotinamide riboside, are they raising it too much? Hard to say. I don't see a lot of free radical damage research out there. Again, this is definitely worthy of future investigations. Now, let me just summarize all this stuff, because we talked a lot in a little bit of time. So, number one, right now, NMN, all laboratory animal research and cells in essentially petri dish. There's no human studies. When those human studies come out, we will be talking about them, and I'll be doing videos on them. All right. Number two, when I look at the research on NMN, I see some of these investigations actually injected the stuff into the bellies of these lab animals. That's very different than oral supplements. Yeah, there are some studies where they put it in the water and they gave it to them that way, but I think the researchers need to leave this whole injection business alone and just go right to the supplements themselves. My thoughts on all this stuff. Number one, again, across the board, I want to see more human studies, not just on NMN, but also on nicotinamide riboside and any product containing it. I think we need more human studies, not just that it raises NAD levels, but what does raising of NAD levels mean? Again, nobody's talking about that so much. The idea is, oh, you raise the NAD levels, everything is hunky-dory. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Let's test it and find out. Now, the idea that is NAD, NAM, MNN as good as NR at raising NAD levels. A lot of N's in this one. Again, they make the argument that it's too big and bulky, but right now there's no studies that could directly compare the NAD boosting effects of NMN to NR. Why not? Why isn't anybody doing that research? And related to that, how come nobody's comparing either of these compounds to niacin? Niacin's where you get NR from, right? So, and I know that niacin will also increase NAD levels. Nobody wants to touch that for whatever reason either, and so I'm hoping researchers will eventually compare them and see what raises NAD the most. But I think that's something we need to talk about. And then the other thing I want to think about is, what's the long-term effects of boosting NAD? Will it make you run faster, jump higher, sleep better, reduce your risk of diabetes and Alzheimer's, all that jazz? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Again, it gets back to I need more human studies before any of us can draw a definitive conclusion about these supplements. Now, do you need it? I'm going to leave it up to you. My job here is just present the research so you can make an informed decision for yourself, and hopefully you just did. So if you've tried NMN or any supplement containing nicotinamide riboside, leave a comment below and let me know what happened. I'm going to put a link in the description to what happened when I tried a NR supplement for 30 days, so you can see what happened to me. As always, guys, subscribe to my channel and share it with your friends and give it a thumbs up, like. And until next time, I'm Joe Cannon. Go out and make a difference. Take care. Bye-bye.